Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you can click the little link below and you'll end up in Zoom. If you're in Zoom, you can click on the link and you'll end up in Mukana. And that is really where the action happens. That's where people ask questions and they vote on those questions. All of you become the producers. You're running the show. So your questions drive what we're going to talk about in the first hour. First hour, if you think you can answer those questions, then you want to come in at 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for mic checks. Got to be here for that. And then if you aren't sure that you're ready, you can come in early, 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, to check your system and see how it goes and just hang out. We're usually talking mostly tech. And so come in then. 7 o'clock is the first hour every day, 7 days a week. You can ask any question you have around media or virtual production. And then we go into the second hour. It's something we're going to spend a little bit more time on. This week is going to be a little hectic. We're making some shifts in our process. So as we go into June tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to start moving towards a different streaming process. So Nate and Andy and Kevin on our side and a couple other folks are all going to be part of this. Jeffrey's going to be part of it. He doesn't know what part yet, but he's going to be part of it. But what we're going to be doing is switching over where we're doing a hard stream from our encoders rather than through Zoom. This should increase the resolution. It will also increase the quality of the second hour. And it will set us up for really creating a new kind of broadcast. And so if you look at the frames here, the fine work that everyone's done on their video quality, we're really to a point now where the next thing to do is to bring up the quality of the overall show to kind of meet the standards that you guys have met or set, with what you're doing. So we're going to be kind of going down that path. Again, Nate's gonna be working on it pretty hard this week as well as Andy, and we'll be being restructuring. Today, we're going to talk about that in the second hour. Tomorrow and Wednesday, we were going to do orchestra recording tomorrow, but we're going to push that off because it's going to be too much chaos. Tomorrow will be chaos. So I don't want to lose that show. So tomorrow we're going to talk. We'll be labbing it out. Could be rough. Just letting you know. Tomorrow could be rough. Wednesday will hopefully be more refined. Then on Thursday, Justine Ezerick, otherwise known as Justine, who's going to be here on Thursday to answer your questions and talk about how she got to where she's at. So we're pretty excited, and she's an old friend, and we're looking forward to having her on. On Friday, we're going to have the founder of Isadora, Mark Coniglio. I'll get better at saying that. Coniglio. Mark Coniglio is going to be on, and he is amazing. I had a great conversation with him last week to get ready for the show, and so we're going to have a great talk about Isadora. And then just as a reminder, next week will be, or not a reminder, but just letting you know that next week we'll have something special for WWDC, and that'll go out tomorrow. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. So we're going to be covering that a little bit more detail than we have in the past. So that's what we've got coming up. Let's jump into the questions. Yes, TJ, you would like to have the host?
Please. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, my internet blipped on me.
No worries at all. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, first one's coming in from Scott Mueller in Clinton Corners, New York. And he says, I've seen some people in ATEM forums putting external laptop cooling fans on the side of the Extreme ISO to help with overheating. Has this been an issue with anyone on the panel? Any other stability issues with this unit? And he has a note with an Amazon link.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Blackmagic has done amazing work on the thermals for that thing. I would not worry about it overheating unless you're in a hot environment. Then all the cooling fans in the world will probably not move enough air across that thing. The thermals inside of that device are really as good as you're going to get. You could try to move more air around it, but it's probably not going to help much.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I own 2 Extremes and I haven't had a problem yet, so we'll see. It's been mostly room temperature type applications. So yeah, right. As Aaron said, the hotter stuff, I'm curious.
Yeah, go ahead, Peter. Can't hear you, Peter.
It's in the wrong place. I from day one, I come from an IT world. Air circulation, water circulation is important. I always put these things on just the simple stands. There were some right early on for the Atem Minis family. There were a set of stands you could get. I got a pair of those, and just use air circulation, normal air circulation in the house, and they've been fine.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, using something like this O-polar thing can actually put a lot of strain on the fan that's already in the unit and could ultimately hurt your system more than help the system. So exactly what Peter said, get it off the table a little bit, maybe have it on a metal surface because that can help with any type of heat dispersion.
All right, go ahead, Courtney.
And the one thing that'll do more to remove heat from your ATEM is lower the button brightness to about 50%, and that will go a great deal in removing a lot of heat from the surface of that motherboard.
Yeah, one thing we found is the number one thing that affects the heat is the buttons, and so I turn mine all the way down. I don't need them to be up, and mine runs pretty much all day. I don't unplug it. I mean, so it's running. It's been running for months. Now, the only time I unplug it is that from a stability perspective, there is some kind of linkage between Zoom and the ATEM that about once a week, Zoom asks for something and I get a gray screen. I have to restart the ATEM for that. But outside of that, we haven't seen any issues. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Mark Giuliani in Alexandria, Virginia. And he asks, can anyone recommend a good lens for a BMD Pocket Cinema Camera 4K when using the camera as a webcam, i.e. office hours? Can I answer?
Yes.
It's sitting right there. This one is the 12 to 40 by Olympus, and it's a pretty nice range. So in micro four thirds, that's going to be 24 to 80. And then there's a Lumix one that's pretty similar. And,
I have the exact one that you're showing there, and it's definitely the right lens. It's great lens. Yeah, I agree. Anyone else? Go ahead, George.
So the 12 to 40, that's what you're looking at right now, just in case for reference.
Yep.
So this is the 12 to 40.
Oh yeah, there you go. So a lot of us for the 4K one, I think that's probably, as a webcam, that is the best lens. Yeah. Next question.
Thank you.
Another one coming in from Scott Mueller in Clinton Corners, and he asks, has anyone set up automation on multiple computers, mixed Mac and PC, to automate repetitive tasks like starting and joining Zoom meetings, pinning cameras, setting up screen scrapes, etc.? What software would you use for this? Zapier, perhaps?
I don't do a lot of that. With the kind of operations you're asking for, I don't usually automate because I don't want to do something I don't expect. Go ahead, John.
So natively PCs and Macs tend to use different languages. So you're going to have to install something on either the PC to understand the language you write for the Mac, or Mac for the one that you do for the PC. I tend to either lean heavily on PowerShell for PC centered scripting, and they can handle most of what you're talking about, or Python for Mac oriented scripting. Again, these are probably higher level than what you're looking for, but when I'm looking to automate tasks, that's how I tend to go around it and think about it.
It's great. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
So Zapier is a way to connect APIs from different services. And so Zapier would get you maybe part of the way there, but not do all of the things you're talking about. You would need something else that's local to do things like pinning and setting up screen scrapes.
Go ahead, Jeffrey, real quick.
Yeah, in Zapier, you might find that it might be a time difference. I've set up things on IFTTT and Zapier, and it takes like seconds or maybe even minutes before they actually activate. So I would highly suggest something internal. Companion can be used this way. Even if you don't have a Stream Deck, you can actually do multi-automation from there.
Right. Next question.
Next one's coming in from, actually, did that just jump? Hold on just a sec, sorry. John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. What is the workflow to scrape a panelist or guest to send them to the Constellation switcher?
So the way we do it is we have a PC, in this case a Dell, and what we do is we have two outputs. We usually only use one of them, but if we need to use two of them, we have both of those there. The reason we use two is for if they're doing a presentation, and then you have the subject, and essentially that comes out as HDMI out of there. It's just, we just use that as the monitor out. It goes into, for us, an HDMI to SDI, just a little Blackmagic converter. So that's all we do there. And then for us, it then goes, these go into a 40 by 40 router is how we do it, so that we can reroute them as needed. And then of course, now they're just video signals to us. So now we have the Constellation, and those go into there. So that's how we screen scrape it. And then that's now just, these are just video signals. They're just camera signals for us as we kind of work through that. So there's not a lot of, and then what we have to do is send back a return back into them. And so that's the more complicated part. That's usually a BMD, either a Duo, or an 8K, I think is what we typically use there. And so, so those are the returns, and what you send in the return can be a super source, or it can be just the program feed. Sometimes we will not send the return back from the Constellation, but actually send this out to some kind of multi-view, like a 16 or a 4, and send that back. So we can send a couple frames back for them to look at. So that's basically the video pipeline. There's an audio pipeline too. Of course, this goes out as Dante, and it goes into the QL1, and then it goes through BSS 806, which then routes the mix minus back. So that's kind of the basic way that we screen scrape those in. And that's what we'll be starting. You'll start seeing us use that a lot more starting tomorrow. So, but that's kind of the process of how we do it. And right now we have up to 16 machines available. We have 10 in line at the moment, that we use for that process. And it's just adding more machines adds more input. It starts to become, as you start to see out that signal flow go, you can see why we run out of router space pretty quickly. That's the biggest problem, routers. And we probably have a whole conversation on patch panels. We're in the midst of installing, I don't know how many Bittree patch panels to allow us to adjust for different shows. Go ahead, Courtney.
One thing I wanted to ask you, since you're bringing in the audio over the Dante, do you have any problems with switching the audio with the video, or do you go back and embed it somewhere in the Constellation so that they're synced up with each other? Or
no, that's the audio. That's Andy's problem. It's just a show. It's like a mic at that point. So to us, it's just like a mic, like anything else. So definitely the audio engineer, so whether it's Andy or Brian or someone else, has to basically, they're following the show as if they would follow mics. I don't know if Andy wants to add anything to that, but there's nothing connected to the switcher other than knowing him seeing the multi-view and understanding where we're at.
Yeah, I think, Alex, your facility as a facility, Dante, we might want to manage Dante differently since we have multiple engineers touching it. And I think that's really a matter of organization, scheduling, and things like that, so that we don't mess each other up if we make a change to Dante.
Well, yeah, and we usually only have one show going through currently, so that usually is just a matter of reset between them. But yeah, there is a bit of setup, because of course one of the things that when we get into the audio there is that Unity is being inserted, with the within the BSS 806. That's where the Unity talkbacks are. So we create PLs for every person, so that we can talk into the ear of anybody that's in one of those individual computers. We can talk directly to them on top of the program return. That way they don't have to have anything on their end. Some people use Unity and have the far end, like install Unity on their machine. We're trying to always keep it to just open up Zoom and it works. And that's we try to increase the complexity on our end to keep the complexity on the far end as simple as possible. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. What's a good way to have a live video background from various sources, e.g. Cable TV, another camera? And he has a note here, which makes it not so much fun. I didn't say best or most expensive.
I have a box that I still haven't tested, but there's a couple different boxes that will pull air, audio, video from the air, or other things there. I'm not sure if that's what you're trying to do. I guess you just want to pull various sources, live video background. I mean, that's typically
various sources, sure. Alex, just from cable TV, for over the air, or just another camera feed. Mm-hmm. Just using that as a background. I guess what would be the
but how would you setup? You would need to key it over. You want to actually be in front of it.
I want to be in front of it, yeah, and I want to have the video in the background.
I don't recommend that.
You want to do it? Do you want to do what I do with my video?
Yeah, like that, Jeffrey. How do you do
like that? That's a whole different thing. Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, so basically what I have is I have an Intel NUC that's going through a computer that I have a touch screen in front of me so I can move things around. And then I join screen. This is Windows box, so it's the same screen on this one back here. So what I see here is what here. Then I make sure that it doesn't get any lights by angling the TV a little bit, and then bringing down the brightness so it doesn't come back and hit me light-wise in the back, and go from there. So that's
not what I want to do. That's not it.
Okay.
You want a background. You want a background like an insert studio.
A green screen and have.
I wouldn't use green screen.
My background.
It'll always look bad. Like the green screen will always look bad. Like unless you go crazy with the green screen. Like this is not like a little project. To look good on green screen, you have to really do it well, or don't bother. Like just don't. Like it's just, you know, it's painful. Like, and it just looks like everybody's working too hard. And that's what half the web is, you know, is people like doing horrible green screens and you know, not looking good. So if you're going to do, if you really want to be in front of someone, do what every insert studio does. You put a big monitor behind you. So get a 75-inch monitor. My recommendation is getting something with a hydraulic lift and the ability to tilt it 15 degrees in. To get it in and just put a picture behind you. But the green screen is just, it's, you know, just, it hurts my eyes when people use bad green screen.
Okay,
You know,
I have a hydraulic lift on order, Alex. Thanks.
There you go. Perfect. But I'm just saying a screen is way better. You're going to spend as much money to do a good green screen. You're going to spend as much money as you would on a 75-inch, you know, 4K TV, because otherwise it's just going to look bad, you know, especially for those of us who have silvering hair. And you're ahead of me. It's way harder, you know, like now if you're aerodynamic, like Jeffrey can get away with it because Jeffrey's more aerodynamic than we are. And so if you're willing to be aerodynamic, it's a lot easier to key, you know, the key is easier and you might be able to get away with it. But in general, I don't recommend, you know, going down the green screen route. You know, it's really, yeah. Go ahead, Richard, and then Sky.
Yeah, Paul, what's behind me right now is a massive TV. And in answer to that kind of the question, that's connected to the Atem Extreme, so I can change the background color really quickly. And it's also connected to an Apple TV, so I could route different things to it really quickly as well. So that's a couple of easy ways in.
Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
I'd also ask the question: just because you can, does it mean you should? With regards to the IP or the content that you're putting back there, who owns that? Who's going to come after you? I mean, music, we've seen the algorithm come after you. What would be the understanding of just streaming CNN or MSNBC behind you? Is that a good thing?
Right.
Is that
right?
Are they going to come after you?
Go ahead, Guy, and then Charles.
Yeah, I played around with this a little bit in the studio. This is the ATEM Television Studio Pro 4K. So it's a 4K chroma key, and it's reflect media in the background there. So I didn't have a bunch of spill coming at me. But I played solitaire. Let me jump ahead a little bit. Yeah, so you see me in solitaire, and then I'm actually touching a touch screen, and you can see it moving around. So I might be trying too hard here, right, Alex? Yeah.
I just don't know. The thing is I guess I have come to the opinion that using whiteboards or using something that you have to touch is skeuomorphic to a history that we don't have to live in anymore. If I want to do a whiteboard, I can do it like this, right? If I want to show you something, I have an ATEM and I can just show it to you. I don't feel like I need to turn my back to you, stand up and deal with all this other stuff. As you know, and again, I've been doing this kind of thing for a decade. So, you know, and once you get used to that, when I can put things right in front of you, I can cut to them. Again, we were talking about this earlier. You know, like if I'm presenting now, I was showing this earlier, is that, you know, if I want to have something come in, if I want to drop something into my screen, you know, oops, anyway, you get the idea. You know, I can do all of that stuff. I can animate all those things really quickly in front of me as I'm talking, as opposed to having to turn around, you know, and add a whole nother motion and another process to it. Anyway, that's my, I mean, I know that I know I'm shooting that one down, but you know, I stopped using green screen because mine was pretty good. You could see almost every little hair, and I still didn't like it, And so I admit that I just I came up in this business as a compositor. So when people do bad composites, it makes me absolutely insane. Go ahead, Charles.
Yes, this is a question for Richard. Actually, a few questions. What lens are you using? What size TV, and how far is the TV from your back?
So I'm on a Canon C100 with a 24-105 lens. I would have to double check what focal length I've set it at because I've been playing around with trying to get a good angle. It's a 70-inch TV. So it kind of, the biggest problem has been the reflections. So one of the reasons why I'm on a randomly colorful selection is because the gray is a little bit too reflective. As you can see, there's a little bit of reflection still from the Cintiq on the table. So there's one of the reasons why I chose a color was to kind of take that away or make it less visible. You can still see it just there.
Yeah.
You're making us all jealous.
That is the challenge. The Cintiq is a whole nother problem. Yeah, if you get a little further away from the screen in our office in DC when we had one there, I think I was a solid 3 feet from the background, but it was an 80-inch.
Quick
and then
question,
a longer lens.
Guy. What TV was that, Guy?
That was a Christie 65-inch touchscreen. Now I'd be looking at the Dells. They're a lot cheaper. I picked that one up used for a song from a startup that went out. So I got it for like a couple $100, which was crazy.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next question.
Next one's coming in from...
You missed another one again.
Actually, James Babbitt, sorry.
Whoa, you got to be careful because you're dropping those out.
I'll get it back.
You can hit cancel. Don't hit done. Anyway, go ahead.
James Babbitt from San Diego says, when playing a video and sharing my screen on Zoom, the audio quality is low and there is no sound unless the microphone is unmuted. How do I play a video and share my screen so that others in the meeting get high quality sound with video? He has a note here that the video has an audio track that plays with poor quality sound.
Yeah, in the share screen, when you click on that, you will see an option in your lower right to share audio. And that you will not need to listen to it through your mic unmuted. It'll just play it out as you play, and it should be as good as the video. It's actually tends to be as good as the audio is in the actual document or the record. Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, and if you want to step it up with audio control is to have your mic and your video come through a mixer, and you can just, mute your mic, pot up your level on the video, and then you have control. You don't have to worry about muting, unmuting, and all of that.
Yeah, you can also do that with something like loopback. Is a way that you can kind of control it as to go through it. So that's another option. But the easiest way to do it is the screen share and just making sure that you're in the lower right. You are making that work. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Mark Giuliani in Alexandria, Virginia, and he asks, "How do you bring a BMD Pocket Cinema Camera 4K into an ATEM Television Pro 4K?" And he has a note that it only has SDI in.
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, I would probably go with a Teranex. This is the opposite of what you need, but I would just get the HDMI to SDI. I've used those a lot. They're about $500. I'm sure they do have a cheaper option, but that's what I've used in the past. Solid.
Go ahead, George.
The cheapest way to go is the BMD bidirectional, and they will actually give you control of the pocket camera also. But like everything else we talked about in the office hour, be aware of your distance of that HDMI run.
Yeah, you want short HDMI run, long SDI run. If I don't have to, I will not make an HDMI run more than 6 feet. If I have to, I will. But usually I try to keep it short. It just keeps everything simple. Go ahead, Courtney, and then Richard. Real quick, we're going to keep moving.
Just one question: is he bringing it in at 4K or is he coming in at 1080p? If he's trying to bring it at 4K, that might be a different. The Teranex will probably work.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Richard.
Just a shout out for Decimator, as has been mentioned many times before. We rely upon them heavily.
Yeah, the only reason that I don't use decimators in this case is because it adds latency. It's a little slower than the BMDs, that are just doing the conversion because it's doing other processing. A lot of times I lose, 3 or 4 frames going through it. Next question.
Simon Ray in Shrewsbury, UK. Composition. If you don't have a plain background, is it okay to have one half of the background filled with shelves and other objects and out of focus, but the other side blank, empty, or should you try to balance the content on either side of the person speaking?
As best you can, I balance it out. It really depends on the shot. You may be able to make it work. It just depends on what it looks like. Sometimes that looks fine. Sometimes it doesn't. Go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, I would also try to balance the background left and right. There's only one real painting that I can think of, or one portrait, the Mona Lisa. The background on the left side doesn't match the right side. Somehow that works, but generally it
bothers
doesn't.
TJ every time he sees it. He just goes, "Oh, that background." All right, next question.
Next one's Keenan Campbell in Princeton, Illinois. When
Hello.
bringing in remote,
keep going.
When bringing in remote
Hey, good
presentation,
morning.
Who's got that? Who's got an open mic?
I got it.
Paul
Okay,
Wallace.
great. All right, go ahead.
When bringing in remote presenters via Zoom to an ATEM, what is the easiest method, either hardware or software, to crop in and remove / hide the Zoom indications? And he's on a Mac.
I believe that the DVE inside of the ATEM will scale up, so you can scale up just a little bit. I think we found it's depending on how the monitor's set up, it's 105% or 107%. We use a scaler, so if we have a FS, one of the FS series, either an FS4 or an FS HDR in our office, so we scale everything up there. But I do believe you can do that inside the ATEM. Even the Atem Mini, I believe, has the DVE will allow you to scale larger than 100%. So you can just use it for that. And it's probably the cheapest way to go, even if that's all it did. if all it did was scale it up, it'd be worth it at $300. And so now, obviously, a lot of software switching software will all let you do that. So these are the hardware solutions to make that work. But OBS and Wirecast and vMix and all of the other ones will scale those images up with no problem. Next question.
Yeah, actually, on that note too, I think it was Grant that figured out a way to, if you can force the resolution to 1900 by 1200, you could kind of push some of the stuff off the screen. So when it's Zoom displays it, you have less to crop off. So
when we do a Zoom room, literally the only thing left is that little connection thing that no one ever pays attention to. It's just a little source of contention for us. Anyway, next question.
Scott Mueller in Clinton Corners. Is there any way to stop my MacBook from opening up Apple Music when I put in one of my AirPod Pros? I've got Zoom up full screen, and whenever I take out or put in an AirPod, it comes off Zoom and opens music on the screen.
I don't know. Mine doesn't do that, but I specifically don't attach my AirPods to my computer because I'm afraid that it'll take over when I'm on my phone. so the problem with AirPods is they're really cool, but they jump from one thing to the other a little too fast, and so I don't have that behavior. Yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
I use PowerBeats Pro, and even though it jumps around like you're describing, Alex, it's never opened up Apple Music. So that sounds like some specific glitch there.
Yeah. Go ahead, Hosman.
Yeah, I use it often as well. It doesn't jump around. Depends on the age of the computer, I think.
Yeah. Next question.
Mark Giuliani, I am using a Moto M2 to get from a Heil PR40 to a PC. I need more similar devices to the Moto M2, but they are backordered indefinitely. Can anyone recommend a similar device?
Yeah, one thing I will say that appears to be becoming more and more important is that if there's electronics you want to buy, the time to buy them is between now and July. Everything we're talking about with different manufacturers is that there is just a massive backlog. I mean, unprecedented backlog in electronics, just certain chips. And you can see cars in the United States all stacked up. They're talking about, I've talked to manufacturers that said that their wait list went from 2 weeks to 9 months in a week. So this is a massive shortage. I think that there's a lot of things that'll do what you're trying to do. A Shure X2U, the Mix Pre's, there's lots of things, but the Scarletts. I mean, there's a lot of things, but I would act faster than slower because of the backlog. Okay, we're gonna go real quick because we're running out of time. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say some manufacturers are actually changing the design of their products without rebranding. So you might want to be careful and double check the feature sets when you order that it hasn't been revised to make sure it's still doing what it is because of the chip shortage.
Yeah, real quick, Jeffrey.
So Brio over the weekend had a price discount, and all the Portal stuff is on discount right now. So you can check that out for good price.
Next question.
Aaron Jen Carley in Flagstaff, Arizona, have a Panasonic GH4 that the HDMI stopped working. Is there a method to test other than plugging it in?
Plugging it in, like plugging it into a monitor. Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
You could try reflashing the firmware.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some cameras flake out for that reason, but it's probably a physical problem with the connector, and you'll need to send it in.
Yeah, 99% of the time, when an HDMI port fails, it is a mechanical problem. It usually means that it just got tugged a little bit, and it may not have been the last time you used it, but at some point it got yanked, and that just slowly comes apart. That's the problem with it. You'll have to have someone repair it if you can. Next question.
Fred Eric Eckert in Germany. Can you control the focus on a Sigma lens, a 24-70 2.8 on a BMD Pocket Cinema Camera 6K via the Atem Mini?
Jesse?
No, I have that camera and I ordered a Sigma lens, not that exact one, but the Sigma 1835 f1.8 art lens. It was an amazing lens, but when I realized I couldn't control the focus, I returned it and I got a Canon. Generally, the Canons that have the USM motors can be controlled by the Atem.
Go ahead, George.
You should be able to control on the art series. You should 18 to 35, just the focus you'll be able to control. I have it in another pocket camera here. So definitely focus, no zoom.
Go ahead, John.
I've got the Sigma 24 to 70 f2.8 lens with the art lens, and I can autofocus it as I just demonstrated.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Paul Valhus. What's the longest distance you can stretch an HDMI signal with an HDMI to Ethernet adapter? And he asked for a link.
The longest that we've done is about 300 feet with a Geffen. I'm not going to have time for a link right now, but the Geffen makes a HDMI extender to it, and that's 300 feet is about the furthest that we've done it. Oh no, that's USB. So I actually don't know. When we go to extend, we extend with fiber. So I'm not sure what the Ethernet link is. Go ahead, Noah, and then Courtney.
A lot of times it'll tell you what the theoretical maximum is when you buy the product. So look at the spec.
Yep. Go ahead, Courtney.
On active ways, find something that uses HD base T, which uses standard Ethernet cable, Cat6, and I think you can go up to 300 meters with that.
Okay. Wow.
And it carries RS-232 and some power.
And I would, it's probably 1082, probably not 4K that it carries that far. Next question.
Chris Taylor is asking Atem Mini Extreme Pro versus Pro ISO. Is the value of having an ISO version limited to having separate recorded channels in post, or are there other advantages and uses?
That's the value, and it's worth every penny. So I wouldn't go once you go down, in for a penny, in for a pound. I mean, like as soon as you go down the path you want to get an extreme, I would get the ISO. I mean, I think it's nice that they give us something that doesn't have that, so you can save a couple $100, but you're gonna wish you had it at some point. Noah?
Yeah, I did a tiny comparison on my little YouTube channel, and yeah, 100% what Alex said. Like basically, it's selling you up to that highest model, and you're going to work up to it eventually anyway. Get the extreme ISO if you could afford it, and you'll get everything you need with that lineup.
Yeah. No, next question.
John Pewitt in Huntersville, North Carolina. It's been a while. How is the test of your cheap wireless monitor system going?
What was the cheap wireless monitor system? Was it mine? Did I have a cheap? The Rode Go. I think that's all I've been testing. I've tested it just a little bit and it works fine. We've actually mailed it out to people. I think we mailed it down to Palm Springs for one of the Mad in the Kitchens, and then I've used it there. But if that's what you're talking about, that's worked. The Rode one has worked well. Go ahead, John.
You had another third-party one that you were looking at. It wasn't the Rode Go.
I haven't gotten to it. It's right here.
Okay.
These little bit trims. I've just been too busy.
You said to give you a little while, so I thought I'd revisit it.
This week is a collision of getting ready for dub next week, and then a big presentation and a bunch of records. And so until I get through probably next week, I'll probably not do anything that I don't have to. Next question.
Next one is from Doug Johnson. It's more of a statement than a question. It says, not a question, just wanted to say hello and thanks for all of the valuable information provided by the panel. Thanks,
Doug. We'd love to have you on more often, Doug. Just saying, you got good stuff to share. So come on and join us. All right. Next question.
Morgan Price, Victoria, British Columbia. Will second hour lab sessions this week be posted on YouTube? I really want to watch and likely rewatch to see how things are being set up, tested, etc.
Yeah, we'll do it in front of y'all. So it'll be a live lab. Next question.
Greg Riley Wheeler, how well does Final Cut Pro work with the M1 Max?
So far, everything I've done on the M1 has been super smooth. I haven't had any issues at all. It kind of is surprisingly fast. I mean, the jump in Final Cut has been bigger than the jump in Resolve. Resolve is working really well, but obviously Final Cut was written for it. So it's screaming. And I've been working off of NVMe drives into it, into that. So it's pretty fast connection, and I've been really happy with it. Anyone else? All right, next question.
JJ McKenna asks, is there a difference in compression for data that sources through a camera from a computer versus elements that are added by keying? And he has a note wondering if there is an additional technical benefit to using a TV in a background versus a green screen.
The output from the camera is uncompressed typically, and if you're doing HDMI or SDI, but at 422. So most cameras are not doing a 444 output unless they really say it. I actually have a camera that does that, but we don't use it that much anymore. So you can, it's scaled but uncompressed. And the problem with that, of course, is if you're keying at 1080p, you're going to see stair stepping at 1080p. The big advantage of keying at 4K is that you can key at 4K and then scale it down to 1080p, and it'll get rid of the stair stepping that you would normally see there. So so that it's not so much compression as much as it is color scaling. That is the challenge when you get a computer output. Next question.
Tim Peters in California asks, what brand 12G patch panels do you guys recommend, and does guys sell them? I guess MarkerTech is what I would say.
We use
I
Bitree.
don't sell them.
So Bitree are the ones that we use, and they are not, the ones that we use are 12G non-normaled. And the reason we do that is because I'm paranoid. So I don't want to pull something out of a patch panel. And now I'm assuming we're talking about real patch panels that have cables and plugs and things. I don't ever want to pull something out of it and have another video signal go through. Not that that's ever happened badly for me, but it has. So I don't like normaled or half normaled or anything through the thing. So it's more expensive because I've got more plugs and more patches. But it means that when I pull something out, I get no signal, and that's what I want. When I do that, we've had people accidentally pull something out and send the wrong signal, and it hasn't been horrible, but it looks like a mistake. And to be honest, I'd rather it go black than push the wrong thing out. So Bitree makes the 12Gs. It doesn't look like it's going to cost much when it says, oh, the cables are only $32 each, or the plugs are only $32 each. You buy 800 of them, it starts to add up. Next question.
Scott Mueller says, adding a Mac Mini to my setup, is it worth buying a second audio interface, digital mixer with Dante, or is the audio via HDMI into my Atem Extreme good enough?
You can get by with it. I mean, if you're patching into the camera, it's you'll eventually want. We all end up with an extra audio interface eventually. So you can start with something else, but you will end up with an XR18 or an X32 or a Mix Pre or something else that's going to feed that camera in. Feed the audio in, because you're going to eventually want to have more control, more sources, and all those things. So that's the kind of thing you want to kind of consider. Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin, which platform/service does the panel recommend for parallel streaming to Facebook, YouTube, and the customer's website?
Go ahead, Leo.
Restream. I've used many and all, OneStream, lots of others, but Restream has been the most reliable and solid for me, and I use it a lot.
Go ahead, George.
Vimeo also does a great job, and you'll get great stats.
And I go old school and just do AWS because I have a link that I want to go into it. You know, the main thing is that my ingest, I want to use Zixi, you know, coming out of something. So if I'm going to send something out, I just want to use Zixi to get out. Because it's just more reliable. And so I know that once it gets into the cloud, then I can just build up what I want. It is not as full featured as Restream or Vimeo. So, so if you're looking for something that's just a turnkey, you don't have to think about it, that's the way to go. I'm constantly working on building up more capacity. So I like to have it be a little geekier. Next question.
Next one's from Dirk Brewer in Guatemala. Going back to Alex's idea of an interactive ebook with text, images, video, and 3D animation, what tools would be needed to make it a reality?
Pages. Pages will do most of that. I think that, you know, iBook still has a couple features that Pages doesn't have, but probably within the next year, all the stuff's there. But I think adding video, some interactivity, a lot of those things are all built into Pages now, Apple Pages, to do that. Of course, you're building for the Apple platform at that point, so you have to decide whether that's acceptable or not. Go ahead, Brian.
You can do it in InDesign, but boy, is it painful. It's hard work.
There's no other relatively easy way to do it other than Pages. Once you start going off in cross-platform or more complicated, it's deep water. Hosmuk.
It's very helpful because the next cookbook we're gonna do, somebody told me last night to do it in iBook, so I'm very happy with that.
Yeah. iBook or pay. Yeah, before iBook, I'm probably going to do some guides at some point when I get through some of the production that we're doing, and I'm just doing them in iBook for iBooks. And I know that people will be like, well, why don't you make it into Kindle and everything else? It's because I want the best experience. You know, like I don't care about it being able to be seen on every single platform. Maybe I'll make a version that's dumb for every, you know, but I want to have one that is interactive and have video inserted and all those bits and pieces. I feel like we're stuck in this old-fashioned book thing, and I'm tired of it. Go ahead, Brian.
iBook Author's been discontinued, though, hasn't it?
It's been discontinued. Still, people still use it. They're not making it anymore. But again, the reason they're discontinuing is because they pushed almost all the features of iBook Author into Pages. So, you know, Pages is now able to insert videos and so on and so forth into it. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Does anyone know anything that can convert Keynote into HTML5 for interactive web pages and that could be hosted on a web server?
I don't. It'd be really cool. And most of us are trying to get Keynote to be converted into motion files. so the and you know that's usually where a lot of us are trying to go. Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, you don't actually need to convert it into HTML5. One of my websites loaded Keynote in directly, and it does play from there. Perhaps I'll hit you up on Discord and kind of go through the steps I needed to actually make a normal Keynote presentation play on my website.
That's great. Yeah, and I think that again, oops, you're watching me. So let me hit play. What I was talking about when I was talking about this is why I think that this without even looking at it, I'm sitting there running animations, and all of this stuff can be done without a lot of special hardware to do that. And I think that is something we all want to think about as far as doing presentations. Is a lot more interesting than slide decks, and I have to admit that I got this from all of you building lower Fenwicks. So I was like, why am I not doing that all the time? And then watching Felipe's presentation too, and I was just like, okay, I have to up my game. And Keynote's the easiest way to do that, where you can actually have it be interactive and make that work. Next question.
Jason Popov says, anyone using DBX 286S? I feel the sound's muffled. My chain is SM7B to the DBX to the MixPre 3.2 into the Atem Mini Pro.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I have the regular 286 and I could never get it to sound good. I just removed it from the chain completely.
Very good. Jeffrey, real quick.
Yeah, a DBX is not meant to be a chain device. It's meant to be an insert device. So you basically bring your chain to the mixing board and then insert the DBX so you can mix in the two so you can have a better sound. You can do it that way, but yeah, you are going to be dealing with the fact that it's going to be muffling the sound a little bit.
Next question.
Next one's from John Pruitt in Huntersville. I have an odd question. On my new system, I put in a 14 terabyte Seagate hard drive in it, and the drive randomly disappears, especially when the system hasn't been used for a while. When I reboot, the drive comes back. Any thought on troubleshooting? Nothing in the logs either, then complaints about not finding it. He has a note here that says also disk scans well and no missing data.
Yeah, go ahead, TJ.
I'm wondering if perhaps the drive is going to sleep in the system and then just not being recognized when it, because drives, you can sleep your hard drives. Yeah, so that's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, JJ.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, that's what I'm slowly coming to the conclusion of myself, but I want to see if the panel had any other ideas.
All right, go ahead, JJ, real quick.
Resistance, check your cables. Resistance over time builds up on wherever contacts exist, so you want to check
brand
your
new,
cable.
Brand new.
I would say that the 14 it's outside. Like for me, it's outside of the middle. I never buy the drives that are on the outer edge. So to me, right now, the largest size of drive exists is 10. So letting the other ones, because the other, over 20 years, I've just found that when I go into that outer edge of capacity, there's a lot of anomalies. And so I just stay a couple generations back, and usually the stuff has been sorted out. But that kind of thing is something that almost always seems to happen with a higher capacity. I remember when that higher capacity used to be 4. All right, next question.
Chris Taylor in Winter Park, Florida. Alex, can you show the equipment and setup to draw directly on the screen?
It's hard for me to show it, but I can explain it really fast. So what I have here is I have a Wacom tablet, and I have an ATEM, and I have a computer. Or in this case, it's a little laptop that's there. So what I'm doing is this is the ATEM. The output of the ATEM, it's HDMI. The program feed is going out and back into the Wacom tablet. This is a Cintiq. That way I see the program, see the comp that's going out. The HDMI of the computer goes out into the ATEM as an input. It's just black and white. It's a black and white input. If I go to camera 5 right now, you'll see that's the that's what I'm drawing on, right? And so except it's black. It's just that it's keyed over itself. Anyway, so it goes into the ATEM here. The USB from the USB, this is HDMI, because there's an HDMI and a USB. The USB from the Cintiq goes out into the computer. So that is talking to the computer as as you would every Wacom tablet, so that you know where the mouse is. So you're just basically drawing on black and white and then putting it back into the ATEM and then putting it back there. And then of course this goes out to the computer. So that's it's easier with an ISO. This is an ATEM ISO Extreme, because I've got 2 HDMI outs, which has made life much simpler. Go ahead, John.
A little funny story. Aaron Parecki yesterday, this question came up on his live stream on his YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And he's doing exactly what I'm doing, which is Procreate off the iPad. And then somebody asked him about the video on top of it, and he mentioned you without mentioning your name. It was great.
Very good. Next question.
Paul
go ahead.
King.
I'm sorry, Leo, real quick before we go on.
Yeah, so I'm doing it in a slightly different way. So I have my iPhone running Keynote. The Keynote is sitting, so my iPhone is sitting here. I'm running Keynote on it, which goes into an Atem Mini.
Right. And we don't see anything.
And that's it. Oh, sorry, I've got to turn the keying on. If I turn my keying on, then it helps, doesn't it?
Yep.
So I just put in the key in there, and there's nothing else. So it's just my iPhone going straight into my Atem Mini.
Yep. And you can absolutely do iPhone or iPad with Keynote in a full. What I'll do in that case is have like 40 white slides or black slides or whatever, and then I just go like this to erase.
They're green.
I make them. So I only do LumaKey because the green will create creates aliasing along the edges. So if you use a black and white, the key is going to be 422. So that bothers me. Next question.
Paul King in Northern Virginia, building a new video studio. If you were starting from scratch, what would be your first purchase?
The space. Sorry, like I think that you really ask that question again, but tell us how much money and what are you trying to do? Like give us some basic ideas, because you can do a very basic studio. It's a camera and it's a switcher and some mics and stuff like that, but it depends on what you're trying to get done, and you have to know that before you get started, and also where you think you're going to go in 3 or 4 years, because most of the equipment will last that long. Okay, we're going to go really fast here. Sky, and then John, and then TJ.
Internet, good power. Know your audio issues that are surrounding you. Do you have neighbors banging on your ceiling like I do? Yes, it's an issue.
John, and then TJ.
A bucket of 17% gray paint.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, TJ.
Higher ceilings, 12-foot minimum, higher if you can get them.
So I have higher if I can get them, but I would say 12 is the right number. Bare minimum is 9, but 12 is the right number. Over that, you start having to deal with like hanging things lower and having more reverberance, and you have to start dealing with it. That's the problem. Next question.
Eric Price in Leavenworth, Kansas. I know most seem to love the Shure MV7. Any thoughts on this mic compared to the Rode Procaster? Thinking about moving to the Shure.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. That's what I'm talking on right now. I love this microphone. Chris Fenwick recommended it to me. He did a breakdown on what I was doing with all those mics, and I've stuck with this. I've got 2 of them now, one for here and one for Cedar Creek.
Perfect.
So
perfect. John.
Yeah.
Not sure of the Rode, but the good thing about Paul's mic is it's got both XLR and USB, so you can grow into a bigger chain.
Yeah. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael. I once saw a video from the band Europe, a lockdown session, where the singer had AirPods in. Wouldn't they be too high latency for live monitoring?
My only guess is they're using that to talk to people and talk to fans or talk to someone else. You're absolutely right. That'd be too high. I don't know. I couldn't do it. That would be a lot of latency for that. You need 0 latency, and they're not going to provide that. So I don't think that they're self-monitoring in that area. I think that they're so they can hear the other side. Next question.
Nigel DeSalle in Austin. For all those who 3D print, which 3D printer do you think is a good starter machine?
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Prusa, any Prusa, the Mark III's or the Mini are good starters.
Anyone else with a favorite printer? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I use the same one Alex uses, and I've had the Prusa. It's the X Plus from
Quiddy.
Yeah, Quiddy. Yeah, Quiddy. It's been the best I've ever used.
I've been super happy with it. Like it just works. Like you put it together, it sat around because I was like, I was gonna take a long time to build, and it took me 15 minutes to put it together and pre-printing, and I use it all the time. And I've been really happy with it. Brian, and then Courtney, real quick.
Not a beginner machine, but if you want higher resolution, a great value is the Formlabs Form 3. Amazing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Courtney.
Creality Under 3 V2. That's probably about $265. It's for the price. It's a workhorse, and I've got 2 of them, and they've held up quite well.
That's great. Next question.
Next one's from Douglas Carmichael. I remember a large music festival I attended that had a separate mix for the front of house console for the video switcher operator. If you didn't have the budget for a separate switcher operator, would it still work to, say, map user-defined keys on the console to sources on an ATEM or similar? And he has a note here that this would be for music, not for corporate talking heads, and the user-defined keys would be on the front of house or StreamMix console.
If I understand it correctly, and Nate can probably underline that more, it's just that a lot of times the web switch gets done on another ME. You have the same sources. It's never as good unless you have somebody. We have had ones where we have somebody cutting the show in 2 panels on 1 switcher. So you've got a 4ME switcher, then you hand another panel over and have them run it on that panel. The challenge there is if they screw up, you end up cutting that main show. The nice thing about that is a lot of times you can cut the iMag on 1ME and feed that in, and then just have the wide shots that you add to it later. And that's usually what happens. And I don't know, Nate, if you want to elaborate.
No, I think you nailed it. That's exactly those are exactly the use cases I've done before, where it's cut an iMag show on 1ME, and that could be a separate panel, and then the other person could be adding in jib shots or other wide stuff that you wouldn't necessarily want for an iMag.
Yeah. Next question.
Another one from Douglas. I read that one perceptual advantage of live concerts versus streams is that a live mix typically has more dynamic range and is less crunched. Why could that be? And how could I replicate that effect with a stream? Seems like you'd back off on the final limiter. He has a note here that says the comparison was of a live mix versus a typical recording these days. The final limiter I meant was a Waves L3 or similar. Wouldn't you want some sort of limiting with a PA as well?
The limiting is up to the engineer. I mean, there's no reason that a stream is going to be any more compressed or less compressed. It's how it's sent to the stream. So you can have as much dynamic range, you can have as many speakers, you can have surround, you can do all those things inside of the stream. You can do anything that's there. So the stream itself isn't compressing. I mean, it's compressing it, it's making it smaller, but it's not compressing the audio waveform in any way, shape, or form. So it's just passing that signal through. Go ahead, Andy, real quick.
Yeah, I think it's also an operational question. For example, if it's one audio engineer who's managing the live house mix and the stream, when I do it, I will put more limiting on the stream only because I can't pay attention to it as much as I'd like. If you have a separate engineer, obviously they'll be able to manage that differently and have more control over it.
Yeah, and we almost never do anything any kind of major concert without both. And at this point, almost all of our concerts don't have any people in it, so it's less of a problem. But and I don't think we're not going back. I mean, I'm sure that people will go back to concerts, but our business is going to be mostly virtual. Next question.
Another one in from Douglas. I've seen pictures of concerts and the music festival that I mentioned where the cameras had full proper box studio lenses instead of the cylindrical field production lenses you mostly see in studios and larger events. What advantages would there be, and wouldn't field lenses be more durable?
Go ahead, TJ.
The big advantage is distance. You're putting a $200,000 lens on the end of a camera as compared to like a $20,000 lens, and the zoom of factor you get with those box lenses is huge, and usually the camera operators are hundreds and hundreds of feet away from the stage.
Yeah, I don't know if Nate wants to add anything to it, but yeah, box lenses are going to have a lot more reach.
Yeah, and in fact, on the back end, sometimes they get wider as well. Yeah, no, that's how you do long throws for sure.
I mean, the most that we can practically do for a throw on our end with a field lens is about 75 feet to get a head and shoulder shot, and so that's about the longest that it goes that in a practical sense before it starts to really break up. So I mean, that's a Canon 50 to 1000 with a 1.5 on it. And that's and we use that with PL, with our cameras. But the other thing is you start going, the 2/3 starts to make more sense again as a chipset because all those boxes are all 2/3 inch, as well as they just, 70x, 90x, 110x. Those are, long lenses. Go ahead, Aaron.
And as for durability, they're really durable.
Yeah.
There's a big steel cage around that lens. So
yeah, they're big. And that's what they're using.
And they're meant to be moved around all the time.
They also have tons of great stabilization built into them, if needed, to smooth that shot out. So some people don't like, there's a lot of, the stabilization's got a lot better. The older stabilization tends to float a little bit. And the newer ones tend to be much sharper as far as, how they handle that. Even then you see shake. If you watch NFL, you'll see, if you're shooting, it turns out if you're shooting all the way across a stadium, it's going to shake a little. Next question.
Next one's coming in from TJ Asher, and he asks, "What is the new office hours website URL?"
It'll be up tomorrow. We'll let you guys know. We're just finishing a couple things on it, but it's Ken's not here because he's working. Oh, Ken is here. He was working on it. He's probably still working out while he's talking. So he's finishing it up. Next question.
Scott Mueller asks, anyone using the Behringer X32 Producer versus the X32, does the Dante card work on both?
The Dante card should work on all of them. All the X32s, same Dante card. The Producer is really nice. I really like it because it fits into a rack. That's the big thing with the Producer is that it's more compact there. Of course, you're going to give up some of your control, some of your faders. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, and I bought the Producer, even though I own a Yamaha QL1. I bought the Producer because you can get it to 50 pounds and check it as luggage.
Yeah, nice. Next question. Can't hear you. Can't hear you, guy.
Oh, Douglas Carmichael asks, in Soundcheck here, I've heard the term noise assist mentioned. I'm turning on noise assist. Is noise assist more effective than most noise reduction plugins? And that's why I was muted, because I was messing with it right now, just to kind of give the test.
Oh, there you go.
So there's my kid's TV downstairs that I had to crank it up. And there's -20. Back to -10.
Yeah.
Back to 0.
And you know, there is some noise, that noise suppression that's inside of Zoom that you can turn on and off. It's nice to have control over it and handcraft it to what you actually need, as opposed to just what Zoom decides to blanket control. Go ahead, TJ.
And one thing we discovered is noise assist is not just a high pass filter. Ray Maxwell had some issues, and noise assist was picking up some low, very low frequency rumbling and cutting that, and that's what was thinning out his audio. It was picking up low frequency as well.
Interesting. Go ahead, Hosmuk, real quick.
I need to just mention noise assist is a plugin for MixPre.
Yeah, absolutely. MixPre on sound devices, MixPre. Next question.
One more from Douglas Carmichael to wrap up the morning session. You mentioned that the lenses themselves have stabilization in them. Would that be equivalent to the software-based stabilization in DaVinci Resolve / Final Cut, etc.?
No, the difference is that these are optical stabilizations, so they're actually moving the lens, and so that the advantage of that is that when you try to stabilize something that's already been shaky, you're actually going to get this weird. If you take something into Final Cut, you'll actually see the motion, because it still has motion blur in the frame. You've just stabilized it. So the problem is that you see this kind of weird shimmering thing that goes on with motion blur. So by actually stabilizing optically or mechanically stabilizing it, you're able to not have that motion blur that's there, and it actually is stabilizing it. And so it's a different style, and much more effective. You can still stabilize the stabilized shot, but that's what it's a much different process. All right, let's jump into the next hour. Now we're running a little late here. I think we have one question here already from TJ, so we'll go ahead and start with that, and then we'll jump into the discussion.
TJ Asher asks, how much headroom will we need for the new streaming if we're on the panel? Are you going to punch in 107% to cut off the Zoom network graphic?
Yeah, so I mean, it's 107% is pretty minor, but yeah, you'll need a little more headroom, and we'll get used to it. And I'm okay with people being slightly cut off. The YouTube look is tends to be towards less headroom, even if you're getting cut off. But we'll tend to give you a little bit of, like this distance that I have right now after zoomed up is what we're going to be looking for. But that's part of what we're going to figure out. This is going to take all summer, like to actually get it totally 100%, to make it all work, to get everything working. But the next couple of days we'll bang on it, and we'll bring people in you won't have to worry about it too much for the first hour for the next couple of weeks. So what we do in the first hour will remain the same. The difference will be is the second hour is going to change for now. So the main thing is that we want the second hour to start feeling more and more. The second hour is where we're going to start testing, having it feel a lot more like a show. So there'll be, super sources, and there'll be, graphics, and maybe even some playback, and those types of things are all going to be incorporated into the second hour. That's where we're going to start setting the pace, just because it's easier. What we found, especially when we have guests, we don't really refer back to the panel that often. We want the panel actually. The hard part we've had is that panelists still want to ask questions directly, and we want them to ask them in Mukana so that they're on the same playing field as the online, viewers. And so we will come to the panel occasionally. In general discussions, we'll still probably just do this. There'll be days where we just don't do too much other than pass it through. The advantage that we have of passing through the encoders for the first hour is that everyone will be at 1080p when we pin them. So when they're spotlit, or that'll be a higher resolution. So back to TJ's point, you might be cut off a little bit, and we'll figure that out. I'm okay. I'd much rather have people head cut off than have too much headroom, because it makes you look short. Like, it makes people look short in frame, and it'll screw up our lower thirds. So I would rather have people. A lot of times what I'm trying to do is have people's eyes when I'm doing it. I think about their eyes more than the top of their head, where I want their eyes in the upper third, right at the very bottom of the upper third of the screen. And that's different than what we grew up with. A lot of us grew up with a lot of, action safe and title safe and all kinds of other safe, and we're not safe anymore. We're just like, we can cut the frame off a little bit. So I think that's going to be a little bit different as we go. And again, what we'll do is do it and respond. The next 2 days, you'll see a lot of that. And I bet you most of us can make the adjustments that we need in those 2 days, as we go through that. So, and then we'll be pretty close. But again, the idea, to kind of back up to what we're trying to do, is that first hour will pretty much run the same way it does now, for now. So the first hour will be a screen capture of this. Basically, it'll be a participant in the show. So there'll be a computer on our end that I did tests of this early on a couple months ago, so it's not that new, but we'll basically get audio and video out. We'll pass it into an encoder and we'll stream it to YouTube. And so that'll be the first iteration of this process, is just to grab onto that and make it work. Now, as we go into the second hour, the idea is that now the other thing that'll change is when we're doing mic checks and everything else, there's two things. One is that tomorrow I'll have the page up and we'll schedule an event with a setup so that we can hit, I don't know if we'll have a countdown clock for tomorrow, but we're going to work on that. But on the first hour, there'll be it'll go live a little early with a countdown clock, and then Nate will be able to switch out of, we're doing mic checks and everything else. Then we all get set up, but there won't be that whole startup. Nate will just say, "You're live," and I'll just start talking. And so, it'll be countdown clock, and then boom, we're into the piece. And so now and then there's not much to do. There's just going to be people talking and everything else for the first hour. But the idea is the second hour, we then go into the next segment. Now, the part that I'm still working out, and it may require us to take a pause, is that the part I'm still struggling with is me, is that if I'm in the general, any of us that are in the general session, it'll be difficult to grab onto us for the second one, because that's the way we work with Mad in the Kitchen is that we have a person, in this session we're all together, but in what we talked about earlier is that every person in the system goes in separately, into the, for the second hour, so that we have individual access to each person. And so that's going to be the thing that we have to change for people who are there. Now, that'll be easy on Thursday with Justine. We'll have her and I and whoever's asking questions. That'll be the three people that are there. Same thing will happen on Friday, and then for Saturday, or not Saturday, but for Monday in the evening for Dub, we'll have. It should be 6 of us. There should be three. It'll be Renee, Ritchie, and Justine and I, and then there'll be. We're working on getting 3 developers, to join us. So there'll be 6 people in that, and we'll still have that first hour. so we'll start streaming. So there'll be a first hour with all of you, and we'll talk and everything else, and then we'll, close it up. And now that'll be a separate stream too. So we'll have our first hour, we're all hanging out and talking, and then we're going to cut to a second stream. Now that gets a little bit more complicated because it's 2 overlapping events that we'll work on there. And we may move to that in general, is that the first hour and the second hour may eventually be 2 separate events. Now, if you're watching on our web page, it won't matter to you. We'll just change the link. So if you're watching in Mukana on the web page, it'll just go clink, clink. But the nice thing about that is that there's 2. If someone wants to watch the second hour, they don't have to find it in the first hour anymore. And so that's, and it'll just create 2 events relatively quickly. So I'm still playing with that process as to whether we do that or not. And so, but anyway, so within that, there's some things about that makes it obviously easier for us because it's easier to onboard. Now, the nice thing about it is we don't have to wait in the second hour. We don't have to have our guests wait, like jump in and be somewhere in the group. They're just going to go into the second hour. They're going to go into the computer for the second hour. We give them a link, and then we put them into their own little breakout room. It's like a green room that they're just waiting. So then we just tell them that we're about to go live, and then boom, we go in. And so they'll just kind of pop up, in that scene. So it's a more, again, it gives us a lot more control. Now the end result, that's what we're doing this week and next week. I don't want to change too much between now and next week, because next week may have a lot of people watching. Once we get to the 14th, the week of the 14th, we're going to start playing with Zoom ISO to grab all of the feeds. So all of you if you take all these screens here that we have right now, and just pull them all into our system and push them into a Constellation. Now we have access to all the frames, so as people are talking, and there's a couple things on our end that may take a little longer for us to work on. So we'll probably play with Zoom ISO and then we'll start to control it. But that's going to start tightening, that experience. And then that way we can randomly access everybody, here. We probably won't go to the grid as much, as that goes. Now, one of the things I'm trying to automate is that the last people who talked, most likely when we go to the grid, it'll be the last 16 people who talked, is kind of where I'm trying to go, because I have a MV16. so we'll cut to the last 16 people who talked. I'm trying to figure out the mechanics of how that works. But then otherwise it'll be the people who are answering questions, and there'll be ISOs and 3-ups and 2-ups. And, a lot of that stuff will start to evolve so that it really feels like a pretty tight show. Go ahead, Jonas, and then we'll go to questions.
So is your MV16, how does it get the input over the Constellation or over your
It goes through
switch?
the router.
Okay.
It'll get doubled on the router. Yeah. So it'll come in through the router. And so it gets it, and the Constellation gets those, and then I'm out of outputs. so it's a little complicated to do that. And we may have to, that's the part that I'm still working on, but you can't do the MVs within, obviously you don't have that many MVs in the process. Now we can, one possibility in the early days until I get more routing is to go through the MV16, which is not something I would normally do for a paying event. Like for a large event, I wouldn't loop through the MV16, but I may, in this case, loop through it just so that I have those pieces. But I still need the router in ahead of it, because I have to get, the router has to be constantly changing what the inputs are for the MV16. So that's where this is where like all of the, and what Guy's showing is where we're going. But this is, so imagine having, sorry?
Yeah, this is kind of what you're thinking. I was just making the spotlight.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the kind of thing that we'll do more of, is having this kind of thing in the show. Yep. Yeah, that, and so there, we'll kind of figure those things out. So that's that's kind of where we're going with. We'll have lots of different builds and designs and move around. Now, one of the things we're working on doing is getting the Mukana to tie into it so that, like, when you guys say I can answer the question, we accept it, and then when we hit go, it'll just give us a 4-up, or of the people who are going to answer that question. So a lot of the stuff will, it'll tie the show much tighter than it is right now. Go ahead, Courtney.
Will the people who are not panelists, who are just attendees, will they be going to a Zoom meeting? Will they be going to Mukana, and will it be showing the center panel of Mukana, or how's that going to work?
At first, I think we're going to still go to a webinar, and we'll just pipe it in. The webinar will just get the video signal that it gets will be coming from. So there'll be another computer on our side that just gets the output of our program, and then someone just goes full screen to it, and that's it. Like, you just literally just go full screen and it shows up. And it's mostly because people have used it in the past. But where we're going is that the only place you'll see it is the stream, eventually, like that's going to be, if you're not, eventually we don't need the webinar to do this anymore. So we have a Q&A system, we have people watching it. The delay doesn't really matter, with the way Q&A works. And so, we'll most likely at some point sever the webinar and just have people watching the stream. Go ahead, Aaron.
My graphics questions. Are we planning on doing graphics for this? Or
Oh yeah. It'll start off really simple. Like, one of the things we're not going to do as we get started, even though I love rounded corners, I'm not going to do rounded corners. This will be, at first, it's going to be pretty basic gray backgrounds with white borders around the thing. Especially because we're going into WWDC, I'm probably going to keep it really simple. But eventually there'll be graphics, for it, and we'll continue to make those better and better. And then there's also, there'll be sweepers, and then there'll be play out, and so the goal is especially as more people have, and by the way, as a reminder for those watching, that in the morning update that didn't get updated this morning, that was my fault. But that's why we're bringing more people in to help, so that we have a team that's working on that rather than me remembering to do it on Monday morning after I forgot that I turned my camera off. So anyway, but the goal is is that number one is when you get updates from us in the near future, it's a pretty complete, it's not just, hey, this is what we're talking about, but here are some things, here's some videos you can watch, and here's some other stuff. And then as we go into the second hour, or we go into the first hour, we have like a little video, like this is the person coming up, and this is what this is, and this is like that little open is like there's like a 2-minute open or a 3-minute open that, and we may and then as questions come in, we may eventually have a team that's kind of building up graphics, like building up like images from the web. In much the way we do this, we do it and kind of in a very organic way right now. Like Jeffrey might pop something up, or Guy might pop something up. The idea is to have people on the back end that are just literally during the show, just grabbing stuff and getting it ready, and then delivering that to a TD, and the TD just sees it as available and goes to it as, as they can. So those are, things that we're going to keep on trying to do. I mean, and again, the goal is to do it almost all remotely, if not all remotely, so there'll be like, we'll have 1 or 2 people at central, the broadcast center, and then everyone will be logging in, and on a giant Unity-Com. So that, but I think that by the end of the summer, I have a feeling that we'll have probably any given show, we'll probably have, 15 or 20 people working on it, and again, as a group, what we'll be defining is like how to redesign the way broadcast works, because it's, broadcast doesn't know how to do this, and then once we figure out the flow of it, then we can start talking about, again, as I said, high dynamic range, immersive audio, those kinds of things inside the show, higher resolutions, that type of thing. And so, but, I think that we're in a position where we've collected this incredible brain trust that we can use to figure it out. And we're all going to learn together, because it's going to be at first it's just going to be us making it work. And then it's going to be us developing a new language for this kind of show, and that's going to be something that's interesting. There'll still be the pre-show and the post-show, and those will probably get longer over time, by the way, it's just so that people have a more casual, this is going to become more and more like a show. And those ones will still be the kind of more conversational as well. So it's not like we're giving up one thing for the other. All right, let's go to the next question.
Let me jump to that window just 1 second. Next question's coming in from TJ Asher. Is this the last weekday show stream to be cut within Zoom?
It's hard to say never say never. The weekends will still be regular. So I don't want to try to do this 7 days a week. I want to have time to re-gear on the weekends. So when we do the weekends, it'll still be back to the old way of doing it, so that we don't have to, we may eventually use the weekends as training, but for now, while we figure it out, we'll do it this way. So we may end up backing up, and like Saturday is a time when there's people who haven't ever done it before get to try a new position, that type of thing, to make that work. Next question.
Another one from Whoa. That's strange. I'm hitting answer and it's not going. All right, let's see it.
Are you doing that in the teleprompter view or in the operator view?
No, I'm doing it in the operator view.
Interesting. Okay.
I think I know what happened. I'm going to go back to that one in a sec. But what's the plan when you uncloak the show?
It'll happen very slowly. So it's gonna, it won't be like in Star Trek where something goes whoosh. But what you're gonna see is over the summer we're gonna start, this is gonna start becoming a show. Like it's and it's gonna tune up a lot more. And I have a feeling that, we're gonna start bringing on additional, guests and so on and so forth that are gonna keep on ratcheting up the quality of what we're doing. Go ahead, Paul, real quick.
Yeah, you skipped 2 questions, Guy, from TJ.
Yeah, we're working on it.
I got him back.
Problem. Okay. Yep. Anyway, go ahead. Next question.
Next one's from Brett Dykus in New York City. Will the second hour workflow involve doing a scrape of the Zoom gallery view, or will that be created externally?
At first, it'll scrape the Zoom gallery view, but it won't go to it very often. Like again, when we're doing a general discussion, it'll scrape the Zoom gallery view. When we bring on a guest, it'll mostly be the guests, and maybe what we are looking at doing is having a handful of people. So if it's a specific thing, like for instance, this on Friday, because we're doing Isadora, we may look at bringing in, Andy and Talak, who spend a lot of time in Isadora. We might have them available to that process, but it'll really be the people who are answering those questions in the second hour as we kind of experiment with that. But down the road, the goal is that we could get to any individual person at full resolution. Now, one thing we are going to do is have the room, there'll be one of our computers will be in the room and can pin to anyone. So if we decide to bring in Noah, for instance, into that conversation, and we want to cut him in, we can have him pinned, and bring him into the show. So we can randomly access anybody, and we'll probably have a couple computers that are ready to do that. So we can randomly still access people in a shared environment, but the key people will be in their own individual connections. And then we will cut to the Zoom scrape, but we can still pin individual people. And that's part of what we're going to figure out tomorrow and Friday and Wednesday, is kind of playing with that process. So there'll be some setup today for us, and then tomorrow will probably be pretty rough as we kind of play with it, but it'll be fun. Next question.
All right, circling back to TJ's, will we still have a pre-show and a post-show?
Yes, absolutely. And as we continue to tighten the show, it's one of the reasons that those exist is so that we have that kind of slow content and we can continue to have that conversation. It's actually one of my favorite parts. The pre-show, especially, or the post-show, I'm not at very often because I have to go to work, but in the pre-show, it's usually my one of my favorite times to just hang out with everyone and talk. So one of the things that I'm looking at when we look at we did a call for folks who want to contribute to what we're doing, the pre-show and the post-show, eventually my goal is to have that running 24/7, so that the post-show runs until like midnight, and then the pre-show picks up at midnight and goes. And what that requires is people around the world being accountable for that space. So we just need to have a schedule of, different people around the world saying, I'm willing to hold the host position, for this meeting, which means they're going to listen to it. They're not going to let it go sideways, that kind of thing. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So that means that either the pre, post, or this show will get a new Zoom link, correct?
Yep. Eventually. Yeah. Well, this show won't need a Zoom link for much longer. It'll be the panelists will get a Zoom link that they jump into, because, by July, I don't expect us to have anybody in Zoom. Like, I don't think that, anybody except for the panelists, I don't think any viewers will be in Zoom by sometime in July, because we're going to move them all to watching the stream as we do it. It'll be too hard. It's going to very quickly be this weird thing that we have to manage both things at the same time, like the output to Zoom and the output to YouTube. And so that could end pretty quickly if it, we've done it in the past, so I know how to do it, but it's not something that I want to continue for much longer. So, and it'll allow us to do a lot of things, like as we move away from Zoom, the folks watching online, eventually we can move it to 4K and other things that Zoom's not going to do anytime soon. We can also do things like have much higher quality. When we do a play out, if we're playing something we want to show, it's going to be at the full resolution and the full quality, not at WebRTC quality. So it'll a lot of those kinds of things will get better. Go ahead, Leo.
It's just my experience is that I'm actually pushing stuff that was in social media platforms like YouTube and Facebook. I'm pushing them back to Zoom. I'm creating Zoom watch parties because people want to be in Zoom and want to watch things in Zoom, even if they are not interacting. So they're not actually being able to interact with what's actually there, but there is something about it and the convenience of being able to just go, bang, that's a Zoom meeting or Zoom webinar, and just start it, even if they're not interacting.
We're still going to have the pre and post shows in that. The problem is that we lose a lot of people who don't want to go into Zoom. So there's for every person that wants to go back to Zoom, there's a whole group of people who don't want to register, don't want to go in, don't want to sign in, don't want to, like there's a whole bunch of things there that make it harder. So we think that overall giving people a link to use will be better. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Mickey. He asks, so after the first hour tomorrow, does whoever is cutting hand the host back to Alex?
It won't matter. Because really when we go when we start returning the show back into the system for the second hour, it'll just be, anybody can be host. It just needs to be spotlight, just spotlight the input that's coming from our system. And so they'll get the audio and video. It's just, you just leave it that way. And then we're pulling stuff in. The only tricky part of that is, again, how we have to think through this is why we're talking through it today and not doing it. That's going to create a feedback loop. So I have to, we may, as we go into it, may have to bring people in, key people into the second hour. Like, I think that this is where, this is where people watching this in Zoom doesn't work, is because feeding it back in as a viewer, gotta think about that. Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Would it not be possible to do it like we did with Matt in the kitchen, where we just have breakout rooms and have a host and a panel, and then you just move people between the rooms?
Yeah, it's hard, but at the speed at which our conversation goes, adding some, pulling someone in and then having them do it, we won't have time, to grab somebody ad hoc, into that. So, I think that the second hour may not include participation from the panel. The first hour will, and then the second hour may, and the reality is that most of the second hours that have guests don't have participation from the panel, and so if we're doing a general roundtable, until we get the individual ISOs done, we'll probably, if it's a roundtable about, horror stories or success stories or whatever, we'll just screen scrape this and push it through. So it won't be a very heavy lift for those days. But when we have guests, I think we'll probably not be able to do that until we get rid of, the reality is until we get rid of Zoom. Like, we could have the panelists join if we didn't try to pipe the show back in, but then I have to figure out how they hear the show. Like there's a loop there I got to figure out. Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, so I scrape and put it back into Zoom, but I think you're absolutely right. You can't have people in two places at once, and you're either in whatever is the new platform.
I mean, this gets into
gets
into the audio issue, where you could theoretically do it if the audio engineer is able to pot the return of the thing, but that could be really complicated if there's any back and forth.
But this is also what you could do, is that the pre-show can actually start and roll all the way through as a single feed, right through to the post-show. And actually all that happens is during the show, the audio, everything in the actual watching room is muted out, and they're watching the actual live show, and then they're back in again. And then the panelists or whoever join back to the pre-stroke post-show, and it simplifies everything. So you can run on a 1,000 user meeting, and you just go back in and out during their actual live event. We sort of, those that are the chosen ones. So yeah, me and Sky are out. Will be will be moved. You'll put them in the live room.
I actually think that I'm thinking this out too hard. I think that we could build a mix minus for this. I mean, Andy can think about that a little bit, but I think that we can build a mix minus for the show, that if you're, it would be a different audio route. So you wouldn't be hearing the program. You would hear, you'd hear the program, but it would be a different, So Andy, this is something for you to think about. It's not
I'm trying to get my head around it. It sounds like it's going to be a series of mixed minuses, but I have to give it a lot of thought.
Series, I think.
I don't mean series as in like one's linked to the other. I mean,
I think
they're not hearing program. They're actually hearing a bunch of mixed minuses.
I don't know. No. Because it's all the audio from the panel will be coming from one computer. So the thing is that all you have to do, okay, this may not be as hard as I thought it was going to be. So all you have to do that would be to create a separate mix bus that is exactly like the program, except for a mix minus. It's matching the program, except that it's a mix minus of what's coming out of this room. And then at that point, you'd be able to have a two-way conversation, and that would not return. That's something we should test for tomorrow. Leo.
But I always refer back to that idea of, like, in theater, you don't want everybody on the stage. It's a great idea, but putting everybody on the stage.
But we've had everybody on the stage for a year.
It depends what the stage is. And this is pushing it at 40 people.
We're bringing people onto the stage as needed. We're not bringing everyone on all the time for the second hour. We're saying you have a question for the person who's being interviewed. We bring you in instantly to talk to that person, and so as a panelist, and the advantage, and so at first it's going to be this weird thing where we're pinning inside of this, but when we have ISOs of everybody, we still have that audio problem for now. But we would be able to randomly access anybody here and bring them into the conversation. But we have to build that. We have to figure out that mix minus, within the mixer to make that work. Go ahead, Sky.
trying to get my physical head. I mean, the head into a physical or archival experience. How is this an agora? Are we all in an arena together? That eventually the spotlight. I'm trying to get a physical vision of what this is becoming.
Well, it's just that I can randomly access anybody here to bring them into the second hour as needed, you know, and that's you know, I can. It's just this will get much more, especially when we move it to the first hour. It'll be easier to see than when you see it. But the main thing is that what we're going to have to do is have it basically. The goal down the road will be people, and things will be tighter. Like one thing that we probably won't have as much of as we go down the path is trailing answers. So, you know, for right now in these discussions, you know, people, it kind of sometimes just keeps on, someone raises their hand at the end of the 3 people that asked the question, that answered the question. That's probably going to slowly fade away. So it'll be 3 or 4, there'll be 3 or 4 questions, 3 or 4 answers, make it good. You know, so, you know, for the person who's answering the question, and then we'll answer, discuss it a little bit. And what'll happen is that what we're building into the back end is that different people raise their hand. Like, so, you know, Sky and Jeffrey, Chad and Doug raise, you know, or a bunch of people raise their hand, but the host or the producer goes first Sky, then Doug, then Jeffrey, then, you know, like this is the process. When literally when Guy hits answer, this is why I've been trying to push everybody to hit answer. When they hit answer, the super source will get built automatically in the ATEM. You know, from that, you know, it'll say, go grab these inputs, put them into the super source and stick them here. And so that gets built automatically. And then it just gets cut over, you know, in that process. That probably won't be automatic. So we'll leave that to the TD to do that. But the point is that those things will, and then, so we're randomly grabbing whoever's in the panel as needed, but they're not showing necessarily, and we can still go out to the panel in that area. Go ahead, Sky, and then Jeffrey.
I just, as you said, if we're just giving answers, that's great. But a conversation, that 3rd or 4th sentence in or conversation in, allows us the brain synapses to start connecting things. So I'm just trying to.
We can still do that.
Yeah,
go ahead. You, as someone who, as an observer of this show, generally, and this partially comes from how I pick people to answer the questions. You know, 95% of the time, the right answer is given in the first 3 to 4 answers. You know, like we don't need to keep talking about it. Like, you know, and so we keep doing that, and it drags out a little bit. You know, and I allow it when we're out of time. You know, usually, or when we don't have enough questions. When we're out of questions or we're low on questions, I'll allow it to spin out. But you'll see me start to cut it off, and I'll start ignoring people to go down that path because I'm trying to pull us back into a fast turn. And it will mean that we'll be more, you know, we will be more picky, you know, about people answering questions. Like, you know, we're really looking, you know, the panelists will have to really be clear that they have to start thinking like broadcasters, you know, and so they have to start, you know, building up their ideas and looking at those questions ahead of time and not committing to every question, like picking the 4 questions that they can answer, researching them a little bit while they're waiting, making sure that they have a tight answer to, you know, to kind of pop through that. It will make this show much tighter, but we're going to extend the pre and post shows to allow for the looser conversations as well. So it's not like, you know, there's a yin and yang of that process. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So the way that I'm hearing this sounds like a next level Clubhouse style event where people are waiting in queue and then other people are waiting in the audience when they raise their hand.
It is. It's not quite as, it is a little bit that, like, it's just much more refined than what Clubhouse can do, you know, and I don't think Clubhouse will ever get there because I don't think that they fundamentally understand what they're doing. You know, like after watching them and watching how simple it is to do this in audio, I just think that they have no idea. Like they keep on adding features that don't matter and don't add the ones that do. And so I don't think that they're going to do it, but you're right that you're kind of setting up those stages. Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah. The staging and the resetting the room are the 2 things that I think that Clubhouse has brought, and the way that operates, I think, is actually really good. The rest of it is like, yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. And we'll keep on tightening the quality that we expect from everybody to be on the panel. So we'll just let you know that, you know, like it's we're getting there. I mean, right now we're just about there. So, but you know, to be on the panel and to actually answer questions will be more than just knowing it. It'll be looking like it's part of the broadcast. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Mickey, and he says, does the panel think that moving away from the webinar platform places an additional barrier to having new people join the panel?
Yeah, go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, I think it does. It may be that it is going to be a gradual thing. And I also think it actually is a good thing, because I think it enables you to say, look, you have to do this and you have to do this and you have to do this. You just don't jump onto the panel after 3 hours. But there has to be a path, or we'll never bring new people in and we'll get stale.
Yeah. So number one is that's one of the reasons that I created the pre-show and the post-show, was that people felt comfortable going in a place that wasn't streaming, that wasn't under pressure, that wasn't, they can come in, hang out and talk to folks and get used to that process. So that part of that is what I'm working on there. The weekends will be open. So the weekends are going to go right back to webinar, like for now, like they're just going to go back. It's just going to be a weekend. The weekends are going to be the way that they have been, just because I want to take the weekends off. And so, like as far as like, I just want it to be like Sundays, it's kind of like that. I'm not certain that we'll even stream on Saturday, like it'll just be like, I just want it to be a down day, or down weekends. I'm not going to stop the conversation, but I need to slow down. So we kept on adding things, and I realized now there'll be some point where we have enough people involved in this whole process that we can do things that are not me, but so far, I keep on measuring that, and I'm not quite sure we're all the way there yet. So, but that's, I've reached my limit. so it turns out 4 hours a day is as far as I can go. So anyway, so that's one of the reasons we're doing the call for action, is to get more people involved in the production, and then more people involved in the hosting, more people involved in the pre and post shows, so that we can start moving past me, not that I'm going anywhere. It's my favorite thing to do all day. But that it'll create more structure, and people won't do things like forget to send out the right email like I did this morning. All right, next question.
Chris Taylor asks, will you be showing the back end of how this is all being physically linked and switched so we can all learn?
Yeah, so I think at first it's just too many variables for me to manage at one time. So as we figure this out, we're probably not going to try to do a behind the scenes post thing, because it's just, I don't want to think about it at that moment. As we tighten the whole thing up, we're absolutely going to have the same thing that we do with Mad in the Kitchen, which is that you can just watch the whole show get produced and listen to everybody talking about it and everything else. Because the goal is not for us to be the only ones that know how to do this. The goal is to change the way people do stuff, and so we want everyone to know how to do it, and everyone to, we want to, start the fire in as many places as possible. So our goal will be to train everyone to kind of take on this newer way of what I would call a conversational broadcast. Next question.
Next one's from Paul here on the panel. Is there a published minimum requirements checklist for the new show in Discord, maybe? For example, minimum camera resolution, approved cameras, minimum audio, approved mics, backgrounds allowed, lighting, etc.
We're still going to be pretty loose about it throughout the summer. I mean, I can tell you that we are trying to push towards, radio level mics, because primarily people listen to it. So we've already done that, and most people have already moved to that. I think that there will be, some point, but I think that if you look at the frames right now, we're pretty darn close as it is. So I'm not ready to set hard limits just yet. But I think we're all closing in on that goal. And I'd prefer to get there organically, which is what we're doing now by just ruthless reviews and stuff, then try to set, this is what it has to be. Because, a lot of it is dependent on just where we are in the process. Go ahead, Paul, real quick.
What about backgrounds, Alex? What backgrounds are going to be, like my background is different than having a gray background, or like a background.
My preference would be, it's not so much that it's going to be a minimum requirement, but my preference would be to soften that background if you're going to do it. So I would do a short depth, I would do something that's going to give you short depth of field, so that's not, it'll look nicer in that sense. So my it's not a requirement currently, but my request would be to shorten that depth of field. Or if you have something that's really busy, like Courtney's is fine, as far as like a background there, it works. It's not totally out of focus in the back, but it works. I think that when in doubt, for me, I was going through this process this week of like, I'm going to put a bookcase behind me and figure this all out for Dub, and I just decided I'm just going to buy another gray screen for the office. So I'm just like, I'm not going to try, that's like my bunt, You know, like I'm just gonna, you know, just not try to make that any more complicated, because it's going to take me too much time to figure out. So that's the, you know, but we'll keep on tweaking. But it's not a hard thing. Next question.
Leo Mendel in Pinner, UK. The name Office Hours is used by many other shows. Have you thought about a new name to differentiate this show or network of shows?
Yeah, I have. The problem is, if I had thought this was going to last this long, I would not have called it Office Hours. It's a horrible name, you know, because it's reused by a lot of other people and everything else. It's just that it's what we know. There is a chance that someday we'll decide to change the name to something else, or that someone will force us to change the name because they're doing something, or they're doing something like ours or whatever, and we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. But you know, I think that I'm not worried about branding as much, because when you build a community instead of a brand, it doesn't really matter what people think of the name. I know that sounds crazy, but it's just not like it's you know, there's a deep rooted foundation that part of it doesn't matter, because people are coming to something. Go ahead, Leo, and then Paul.
While I'll agree with you, I've noticed in particular that other similar people in the similar space are starting to use this name as well. So
yeah.
PTZ Optics have got an Office Hours. StreamYard have got an Office Hours. It's just becoming overused, and it's massively confusing because it devalues your brand.
Yeah, and again, I'm not as worried, because they can't find us at the other ones, or they can find some of us in different ones. You know, at some point we may do it. The foundation is going to be Office Hours, and so we spent a lot of money on that. So that's in process. Hopefully, it'll be done in a little bit. You know, I kept on trying. I have another brand that we can use. I had talked about it in the past, and so there's other places to go. I've got a logo. I've got other things that I was planning to use, and I just haven't. Problem is just that I'm not ready to change the continuity yet. That's the issue. I'm going to keep moving from the next question here. Next question.
Next one's from Chris
A lot of
Taylor.
questions. Go ahead.
Will all producers need to be registered early each day for first and second hour? Since there seems there will be no way to raise your hand to be promoted from the webinar.
Well, what we'll do is we'll have a place where you can go to go into the meeting. Like right now, again, it's not going to change immediately, so don't worry about it. But eventually what we'll do is, and there will be a point where and everyone here will be fine, but there will be a point where you kind of need to do the weekends, and you kind of need to come into pre and post show before we're going to have you join the meeting. It set you up to join the meeting to be potentially a panelist. So there'll be kind of a different layer that kind of gets added to that over the summer. And it's just minimum quality requirements. Next question.
Next one's from Leo Mindell, and I thought it was Pinner just a few minutes ago, and now it's Cardiff, Wales. What did you do?
He's moving,
Leo?
He's driving, he's transporting.
I was in Wales on Saturday. I'm back in London.
Okay. Will you be looking to extend this new setup to similar shows like AV Tech Talk and the shows that Marty and I run?
Yeah. I mean, what we want to do is we want to, we definitely, I will say that religion and politics are something we're going to take on very carefully. It may not be something that we put into the network. It's just something that I feel like one of the success stories that I feel like we have with Office Hours is that we've been able to take people from all over the world with all kinds of different political and religious backgrounds and get them all just see the humanity in each other rather than all the other stuff that we watch on TV and get separated by. So I'm completely behind. I love that you guys are doing that, and I'm happy to talk about it and promote it for people to go to. I'm not sure if I'm ready to put it into the network. That's because I'd have to feel like I need to put all of them into the network, and then I have to figure that out. And so I have to. It would be that specifically would be difficult, but adding more shows, absolutely. And it's one of those things that I'm not against. Like I kind of want to. I do want to figure it out, because I think that just talking about the tech of house of worship and everything else, I think is really interesting, and I think it's something that we should support and figure out how to make that work. I just don't. It's something I have to think through for a little while, and I think that eventually we're going to find a way to include that. It just has to have a lot of guardrails that we're not talking about, that you and Marty and whoever else does it really make sure that the conversation is really about the logistics and the technical and not, get into the other pieces. And so yes and no. Like, depends. Like we'll figure it out, because it's, again, I think it's a really important part of what, and a lot of us do it. There's an enormous number of people within office hours that work on different house of worship solutions. So it's something I'm interested in. Yeah. Next question.
TJ Asher asks, will we need to start mic checks earlier for the new setup? I ran about a minute over today.
Yeah, I think we probably will move that to right to 640, to give us a little more time to do it. We also have to move faster. I think that one of the things is a lot of times plus or minus 1 dB. I think we should just it's probably not naturally how people talk anyway. So I think we have to open up that a little bit so that we can just move through it faster. Like we're going to get to someone and again, we have to get to people to fix the major problems and major issues. When they're off 5 or 6 dB, I think it's good. When they're off 1 or 2 dB, I think that depends on how they feel when they're talking. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I'd like to suggest actually putting the sound checks into the pre-show, since the pre-show and this show will be completely separate. Then somebody can be bounced over to the pre-show to check their mic if things go a little bit wonky at one point, and then they can come back.
Yeah, we could eventually look at doing something like that. I have to, having someone once we move to meetings and have breakouts, just send someone out to work on tech, and if we have someone there to manage it, I think that could make a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
John Pewitt, while we are streaming from YouTube, are we going to link to the Mukana page?
Yeah, eventually we won't stream to YouTube. We'll stream to something else, but for now, it'll be a Mukana page inside of the new website that you can go to and ask questions. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, right now we're using the Zoom link to advertise the program sort of through YouTube. So I was just wondering as an extension, how are we going to, if we stop using YouTube, how are we going to advertise?
Well, we're going to still go through YouTube for now. And then a lot of it, we don't get that much growth on YouTube. like YouTube doesn't, it's primarily us. I mean, it's our archive. And so the way that it promotes, the way this grows is people tell each other about it, or we bring on a guest that brings a lot of people with them, or, that's where we see big surges of growth are referrals and guests. Those are the primary engines for doing this. For instance, the WWDC activation will be promoted pretty widely tomorrow. So it'll and so it'll pick up we'll probably change the structure a little bit. Go ahead, Leo.
I was going to say the cutting of highlights and clips and bits and putting that into YouTube is going to probably be a much better way than actually showing the live show. And that will drive stuff. And I'm looking at Jeffrey when I'm saying this, because he's the master of all of this.
Well, and again, what my goal is to build a team that's that are pulling out good answers and stuff like that. I'm not that interested. I have to admit, I don't worry about growth that much. I just worry about doing a good job and letting people show up. And I think that the primary, again, where I prefer to grow is through referral. People talking about it here. It'll be a lot easier. You won't have to send out a Zoom link much longer. You'll be able to, if you want people to see it, you send them to the webpage, and they can just sign up and do it. It'll be the barrier for that entry will be much lower, and there'll be an actual description about what office hours is. You don't have to explain it to people, and you can, there's a bunch of things. In addition to that, I will be adding more content to the new YouTube page, which will go up soon tomorrow. I'm going to have it set up for it. I just have to get a bunch of registration stuff done. And so I will be posting content there. I'll be working with Hosmuk's team to post more content there. And then other people here will be invited to, if you want to build videos there to help, both build up that brand as well as build up your brand through that. We're posting it. So that's going to bring more people into the YouTube thing. And then if we show clips, or even the whole second hours, or even the first hours, like those clips, I'm not saying that they may not stream to YouTube, but they may still be posted there later. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Does that mean that TJ and I are getting a raise?
Yeah, exactly. I'm doubling your pay. All right. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Sky, and he asks, moving forward, will the Mukana chat links to Discord connected to YouTube still work?
For now, yeah, because it's still going to stream to YouTube. And then as we move forward, I'm trying to tie Mukana tighter into the playhead. So that's, so as we go down the path and we tie Mukana to the playhead, it'll get much more interesting, because It'll basically every answer will become part of a larger database.
Yeah, that curating is pretty critical. I'd love to have the same answer go, point to that index card and it goes to that part of the aisle and find it.
Yeah, there's a lot that can be done there.
Copy.
Go ahead, Leo.
And I'd say that there's a lot of really valuable information that we sometimes miss or skip over because of the speed that comes in the chat, both in the Zoom chat, out on the PM post, and in Mocana. There's a couple of people who we know will never appear on the screen, but actually add a wealth of information. And it would be great if there was somebody literally going, right, we've had these comments and come in from here just to catch up.
And I think that can be, again, as we build up the team of people who are doing this, we could end up with someone who's in the social desk or the Mocana desk that raises their hand and lets for instance, might let the TD and the host know that they have something great from the chat. And then we can pop it in. And Mocana already, in the back end, we can grab a chat entry and push it straight to graphics. So we already have that built in. We just don't use it in the show. Go ahead, Leo.
I was just going to say that Omar does an exceptional job on this on AV Tech Talks. Andy, I know, is on there with as well. So he just literally picks up the stuff that they see in there and say, this person said this, and they wrap the show by all of the comments of what people said of the show, which is a really nice way of bringing people who are watching in so they feel that they actually participated.
And we definitely want to increase that. I think we've been limited to what we're at in that area. Next question.
Next one's from George Kennedy in Washington, D.C. Alex, once one commits to office hours production, there will be times where they're not available because of other commitments. How will that be handled?
It'll be unacceptable. You will be kicked out of the plan. The goal is to have a group of people that are working on these things. And so, committing to an individual thing in the same way that we have different people cutting the show today and asking questions than we've had in the past. And so the goal is to have lots of people know how to do this, and so if we lean on one person or an individual or a small number of people to do any of this stuff, then we failed. And so if someone's not available because they have to work or they have other, commitments that are handled, all organizations have to build resiliency into the system. And, we may fail at times, where we can't get something done the way we wanted to and might have to back up and do something more simple because we didn't solve that. But that'll be the cost of us not getting it solved. But that's one of the reasons we're reaching out, is so that there's not so many things that are left to so few people. And so, we're going to keep on working on that. But it's a good point, and we're definitely going to try to build a team that's like the TD team and the audio team and the, so teams that are, so somebody is committing to Tuesday. It doesn't have to be you, but it needs to be somebody is going to cut the show. And if they can't, if something comes up, they can call someone and someone else will do it. So that's the hope. Next question.
Ramiro Valdez in Houston asks, how can we become part of the team that will run Office Hours 2.0?
Fill out the form. Went out this morning. Everything is incorrect except for the top part. So the top part is a link. There's a form for the production program. So just fill out that form, and I got to build a team that will manage that team. So I have to, kind of work on that. Right now, I'm just trying to get these shows off the ground. So it might be a week or two, but we want to kind of build up that thing, and you'll start getting emails, and we'll start going from there. Go ahead, Jeffrey, real quick.
Do you want me to fill out the form as well, or?
You can. Yeah. I mean, we know that you're there, but it makes it easier for us to have all that information.
Find out if there's anything else I can help in, maybe.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Next question.
Gualberto in Santa Cruz, Bolivia asks, is it possible to call a super source on ATEM and also feed it in an overlay graphic as key and fill? Is there software, Windows or Mac, that can manage both, calling the cut and feeding the right graphic for the cut? I was looking at Mimo Live, but is not key and fill.
Go ahead, TJ.
I know this because I accidentally did it yesterday during Victor's show and had the super source going and then put a lower third over the top of the super source and did not know that was possible using the Atem Mini Extreme.
There you go. Next question.
Hasmik asks, to be on the panel, one had to have good audio, video, framing, et cetera, et cetera. Is the capacity to ask/answer questions or participate in a meaningful conversation become important?
So far, it's been pretty good. Like we've organically found our way to, a good conversation that are good answers and good questions. I think that I'm not sure exactly how we organically did that, but we have built up good panels It hasn't always been perfect, but it's been, I would say, 95%. I think that we are going to go through, as we kind of go through this next phase, we'll go through some troubled times as we start to, bring more people in, both in Mukana as well. A lot of people are going to see it, possibly thousands at one time. So, we have to be ready as a group to kind of withstand the little storm that's about to happen as we go down this path. And so, so things will be a little bit more difficult. But again, that's one of the reasons we're going to move to the meetings for the panelists. And that will come from a list of people that have been here in the past at first. And then the weekends will be wide open, and the pre-show and the post-show, and people can sign up like, I want to be a panelist, and things will be a little bit more organized because we have to kind of be more careful about it. Go ahead, Sky, and then Hosmuk.
And the three mandates of no politics, no religion, and clean show. Those, if those could be in bold letters at the top, so that people know what they're getting into. We all come from our different experiences and backgrounds, and so we're learning the rules. Happy to play by them. Just
people pick it up pretty quick.
It is also a good thing to have it on the front door.
Yeah. Go ahead, Hosmuk.
Being an OG may have some value now.
Yeah. The OGs, definitely, absolutely. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael. How are you piping the production communications for Mad in the Kitchen into the Zoom room? Is it basically sending Unity intercom audio into the room?
That's correct. Just piping that in. So you're hearing, and that's a more complicated process, but yeah, it's just piping the sum of all of those back into the Zoom room. Next question.
Next one's from Dirk Brewer in Guatemala. I don't understand why the second hour will be a fixed view without the option to interact pin, multi-pin, preview feeds. That's why Mad in the Kitchen YouTube versus Zoom is not competing. It probably means compelling for him. What happened with participatory media?
Well, if you look at a lot of the ones when we have guests in on the second hour, the panel isn't interacting that much. We're mostly talking to the guest. And in fact, it's mostly me asking the panel to put their questions into Mukana and not raise their hand, which drives me crazy. So because it's short circuiting my system, of trying to keep that participatory that you're talking about is me trying to keep everybody on the same field. It is everyone, the panelists should also have to put the questions into it and not be there unless, again, there's going to be points where we bring specific panelists in because they're the ones that are closest to that product, and they may have more. We might bring them in that situation. So there's we might bring, if we're talking about music in the same way that we had it, you'll notice that Todd and Jeff and a handful of other people had. We'll bring in the 3, 4, 5 people that we that make the most sense for that talk. And again, that's what we want a team for, to organize those people to make sure that they're ready to go. The participatory part of that is still going to be A, the first hour, and B, that there's Q&A coming in from the whole audience so that you're answering questions. And so it's still, it's still not going to be a TV show the way you've seen it in the past. It's still going to be, and, I think that over time, we still can bring in those guests, the pinning and bringing them in, and eventually the Zoom ISO is one step forward. Once we're able to get individual audio, now we can randomly bring in any panelist that we want to add things to it. So I think that, and we're going to find our way. We're going to decide some things work and don't work. Next question.
Carmi Vineswig in Redondo Beach. As the show gets more popular, are you worried that the pre-show will itself become too big and too intimidating for people to join?
I think the pre-show can get pretty big before it does that, because most people just join and don't turn their camera on. We'll have 40 people in there and there's like 8 people talking. So, I think we could grow a long way before it became hectic. And you'll notice that I don't promote it. Like, we're talking about it here, but it's not something I push people towards. I tell, even in the beginning, when we do the open, I don't tell people about the pre-show. That's something, if it's a little bit of a speakeasy, in that sense. Also, as we extend the pre-show hours, which I'm committed to doing, we will stretch the number of people out, into that. And so, we'll get to a point where there's, 40, 50, 60 people across, many hours to make that work. And so, again, my goal is that the pre and post show eventually just become a background, and it may even be something that the problem with Zoom is that it turns off every 24 hours or something. I think it's 24 or 36 or something like that. So there'll be some changing of the guard there, but my goal is that eventually it may just be one show that happens, and it might even be that's where during the show, we just pipe in the behind the scenes into it. So there's some folks who just sit in the back and watch the behind the scenes instead of watching the show. But we'll have to get a little bit larger before we do that. Next question.
Next one's from Richard Lavery here on the panel and in Belfast. To get to 4K, what is the transport method for bringing the panelists in if you don't use Zoom?
The plan is 4K. The plan is the broadcast 4K, but with 1080p ingest from the panelists. So if you think of the 4K will be better when we do if we do a super source, everyone will be they're all scaled down. So everyone will look, higher res actually. And obviously the background will look higher res. And then when we play back things, they'll be higher res. When we show images, they'll be higher res. So there's a bunch of things that will be a higher quality because of it. But the images themselves, the transports at the moment will be still 1080. And we're researching some tech that would eventually allow us to go to 4K for the panelists, but a lot of it has to do with people's up speed. So you'd probably, we need everybody to have 20 meg to 30 meg up to reliably do 4K. So that's one of the challenges. Next question.
Aaron Jen Carley in Flagstaff says, do you need to be part of the panel to be part of the production team?
No. And you don't even, we're looking for everything. I think I only asked for a handful of things in the questionnaire, but if you're interested in also, there's going to be organizational things. There's going to be, so if you're a producer or you're a coordinator or you just want to help, you just got to let us know what you have. And then we'll be talking to people more over time about that and figuring out where people fit in that process. Next question.
Noah Sargent Fullerton asks, working backwards from the ATEM Constellation, will you need HDMI/SDI converters and computers with HDMI out for every panelist?
Right now, yes. Our goal is to figure out why we can't see the Blackmagic SDI outputs. So what's interesting is that with Zoom ISO, we won't need it. So we're using we're using the Blackmagic either duos or 8Ks. And we can punch up to 4 out at the same time through SDI. So the ones that are going out of the ISOs, we can get right now in SDI. The problem we have are the ones that are. I think I might have just fixed that in my head, because if we do that, we could technically use ISO for even the individuals, and then would only send out one. So then we could get SDI back. So yeah, I'd love to get rid of those converters. It drives me a little crazy. Next question.
TJ Asher asks, will there be an audio channel of the show in Mukana?
Yes, unfortunately, I keep on giving JJ other things to do, but we're working on getting an IceCast system up so that it's Shoutcast or whatever is annoying. And there's two things. One is to get we are streaming. I think are we streaming now to it right now to Mukana? We should be. Maybe not because I think Mickey manages that. So, but we're going to start managing it in the office.
I pushed it in. Yeah,
we're
in there.
Okay, great.
I pushed it in every morning.
Yeah, so it's there now in Mukana. It'll be much better when Mukana's its own app. Much easier because you'll just hear the audio, and it'll work when you close it and everything else. Next question.
Dan Maliska in Nelson, BC, need a solution for my daughter who records horse riding instruction videos in arenas up to 200 feet away. She is currently using a Pulson ULW-16 wireless system to the camera, but has multipath issues as she moves around. Is there a system that is not susceptible to multipath and can record a local copy?
Teradek. You're looking for Teradeks. It's not. We're kind of talking about something else, but I'll just answer it real quickly for you. But Teradeks are what you're looking for that kind of thing. Next question.
Last one, Douglas Carmichael. I remember reading that for esports, you don't want to have anything in the display path between the gamer's PC console and the local display. I know many Twitch streamers have used OBS and capturing their screen from their gaming PC. What has your experience been? And he has a note here. And have you ever used a hardware production encoder, NDI et al. For esports?
We only use hardware encoders. So yeah, that's all we've done. Go ahead, Jonas.
For esports, what you want is a small that the reaction time of the players can be low, and for that you don't want to add additional latency. What you can do if you want to do like an Atem Mini Extreme that now has 2 pass-throughs, so you could pass through the signal, and then it should be almost with no added latency. And how those gamers with OBS do it, it's either a screen capture, or if they play on a console, they use like an Elgato 60S that also has a pass-through. That's how you do it.
So any more questions from Nate or Andy? Because you guys will be deep in it. Or the things that you're trying to figure out coming up for you?
No, I'm just kind of trying to process the look and feel of the show, and look forward to seeing the actual inputs in the switcher.
Right.
You know, ideas on, you know, one of your thoughts was the challenge of the transition between the two shows. Getting to that second hour, is it something where that first hour ends, there's a 2-minute break, countdown continues, you get faxed, everybody gets set up, it's ready to go, and the second hour opens, you know?
Well, and one of the things that I think I want to try tomorrow is to pipe me back into the first hour through the system, which will mean that I have a little bit more latency going through the system to come back. So I want to see what that looks like, because then that means you can just switch me over. Like I don't have to jump out of anything and get into anything. I'm just, now, one of the things that may make it easier is that it won't happen tomorrow, but by Wednesday, I may be coming in from the office. So I may just, you know, I'm for the next week, it may be easier. One of the things I'm looking at is just tying directly to the event so that I'm not going through Zoom, you know, to make that work. You know, and so that might be the easiest way to do that. So I'm kind of looking at that. And then I just join, you know, like it's just joined from one of the computers, and but it's just very, that might make it easier. Because then I have if we lose any kind of connectivity or there's any Zoom storm or whatever, I'm still able to talk through it. Go ahead, Aaron.
I might make a suggestion that if we're going to have a gap between the two shows, which maybe we do, that it would be cool to have some sort of recap of the first hour, maybe by the person asking the questions or another producer writing some stuff down, some notes between them, and then somebody could just read it out for a couple of minutes. I think that'd be really nice.
My goal is to like recapping stuff is really hard. My goal though is to set up for the pre-show is to have a 1, 2, 3 minute pre-roll of announcing what the thing is. So we go, you know, there's like a little play out that happens right at the very beginning of the show that is like, coming up next, we're going to talk about recording orchestras and what it takes. We're going to have Jeff and Todd, you know, like gonna boom, 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 and we'll have this thing. And that's something that the team that does that is going to, you know, that they'll produce for every one of these. And again, part of that has to do with pushing our horizon of events way away from us. So starting to schedule these days a month out in advance. You know, and then having you know, then there's just a machine of people that are kind of putting these little blips together and figuring out what those look like. And that gives us that little break. But I think that in the short term, I think that we can actually relatively quickly transition. Now, what we may do on Thursday is take a little extra time to just make the turn. You know, like we may end at 7:55 and just kind of go, okay, now we're gonna like get ready for it, and we may do that a couple, you know, as we get started and do it conservatively. But we'll see. You may see in the next day or two, in Tuesday and Wednesday, us starting and stopping things a couple times. Like, hey, let's try this, and then we'll all talk about it and go, no, that didn't work, you know, or let's try this. And so, you know, it really will be the next two days will be really interactive of us trying to figure it out, you know, and think through it. And we may even have an opportunity for people to jump in later in the day, tomorrow and Wednesday, to just, you know, help Nate test some stuff or help us, you know, have a handful of people doing, you know, just to kind of fax things out, you know, in that area, if that, you know, so. Other questions?
Is your idea, is your idea that that we're kind of going to go like a broadcast network where we hit the show at the top of the hour? That's rigid. You know, we've got lots of people tuning in. So
yeah, I've gotten a little lax recently, but my goal is to try to hit it to the second, you know, so that, you know, it's, you know, that we atomic time second, like we figure out what our offsets are, like we did with MAD, and we, you know, so our time is 20 some second, you know, 27 seconds or 17 seconds or 22 seconds ahead of in the future, to try to tie it together. Yeah, we're definitely, as we move down this path, we will be looking for precision. Noah.
You can definitely use that time to do pre-produced elements like you're saying, or maybe somebody has a specific project where it's like a 60-second look at how they accomplished, doing this project or that project, something like that.
Yeah, and also one of the things that I'd love to do is we'll gather things from everybody. Like we might even have a countdown clock that's supered over some just slow push-ins of behind the scenes that different members send. Like you put your name, we'll give you a format of like put your name and location or whatever, what this was, and you send us an image, and we just cut between, we just have something that's showing different, it's just behind the scenes shots. I've got a lot. But I'm sure that a lot of us do. So we could be cutting between some of those things in the play out while we're waiting for the next piece. That could be kind of a fun thing to watch. One of the things that we are going to try to do is we may be looking for a handful of you, and you can Discord me in this one because this could happen a lot faster. Is for Dub, we're going to do it in the evening, 6 o'clock. Obviously the keynote happens in the morning. We may be looking for some folks that are interested during that day to, cut together some little, highlights, from, of stuff and things that are interested. So Discord me if you're interested in being on that team to kind of throw things together. It'll be pretty simple, and we'll probably work with Nate on like what he wants and everything else, but we might have and I can even, later in that afternoon, when it's done, just do real quick voiceovers and, do a little intro for each one of them. And, so we might look for a team to kind of do some fast turns on a handful of things. There's usually in one of these things, there might be 3-4 things that are generated there. So go ahead, Sky.
Well, and a producer's role, as well as a story and writers are concepts too. Yeah,
we're definitely for people who are working on this. We're looking for everybody. Like anybody. Coordinators. We need if you don't know how to do things technically, but you're good at organizing things, we're looking for you too. So that's definitely a piece of that puzzle. Any from Andy or Nate? Any other questions? I know we ran a little heavy.
We'll figure out this mix minus thing. Mickey and I are going to talk about it after this.
Okay, great.
I think I have an idea about it, but I don't want to present it yet.
Okay, great.
No, and I guess I keep coming back to that transition. Just having done a lot of live TV, like I'm sure a lot of people on this panel have as well. That becomes an animal, especially when you're going show to show. Somebody needs to be able to wrap and come to a countdown and all that kind of stuff. So it could be a challenge. It's not easy.
As we begin, I'm happy to give you a longer runway. So like we can just end at 7:55. Yeah, end the first hour at 7:55. And it won't go, today we're going over because it's the last time we can do that. No, so it'll end, we'll just end it so that we have some time to get our feet up under us. Especially as we begin, and we should go ahead and try that tomorrow and just see how it looks. But I think that we want to not make it, as Nate and I worked long enough. I will always go conservative over aggressive. So I'm happy to stop for 5 minutes, let us get our feet under us and then come out and do the show, especially because the first show that we're really doing will be high profile. So anyway, so we'll figure some of that out tomorrow. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's it for today. That gives us a kind of an overview. And I think that a lot of folks have some things to think about, and tomorrow will probably be a disaster, but we'll have fun with it. And then we'll work on it. We may, as a note, depending on where we are, I will say that Wednesday may be all lab. So because Thursday is a hard start, Wednesday may not be any Q&A. We may just do figure this thing out, together as a group and just get it working. So stay tuned for that. I'm just letting you know. But tomorrow will still be open, Q&A, but we are going to stream through the system because that's going to let us see a couple things as we're working through it, things that work and don't work. And that'll inform Wednesday's process. All right, everybody. And there still is, yes, a post show that I'm not ready for. So this is me, stretching because I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared. I was sitting there talking to you and not actually starting the post show. So now I'm stretching and we're stretching and now we're going.